Hey everyone! In today's video, we're going to take a quick look at how to convert virtual machines from VMware ESX to Proxmox. Over my holiday break recently, I had quite a bit of time at home to myself to spend working on some home lab improvements, and one of the things that I wanted to do was potentially try out using Proxmox versus ESX, mostly due to some hardware compatibility with some older devices, as well as I kind of liked the ability to manage a lot of the HA and redundancy features in the Proxmox software directly rather than having to run something separate, like having to use a big vCenter VM. So of course, I had a lot of stuff running in my home lab already, and one of the considerations is always, how do I get my stuff from one system to the other? And I kind of expected that the migration process from ESX to Proxmox would be kind of involved, and I was very surprised to find out how simple it actually was. So without any further delay, let's just go ahead and get into how to do this. So in my home lab right now, I did spin up all brand new versions of Proxmox, currently running version 8.1.3. On the ESX side, I am running 7.0. I've migrated quite a handful of the VMs so far off of this host, but the one in particular that we'll be focusing on for this video is this Ansible VM. Now, if I go ahead and click on it, we can see that that is a Debian Linux box with 2 CPUs and 4 gigs of RAM. So in order to begin the conversion process, the first thing that we're going to need is we're going to need a conversion tool actually from VMware. This is going to be the Open Virtualization Format Tool, or OVF tool. You can get this directly from VMware's website. The current version is 4.6.2, which I'm going to download and will be using for the duration of this video. Once we have that on our PC, I've already unzipped the download folder here. And within that folder is just a folder called OVF tool that contains the files that we need. So we'll go ahead and copy over the OVF tool files to our Proxmox server. Since I'm running Windows, I will be doing this via WinSCP. So I'll go ahead and log into my new Proxmox server, and we'll just drag and drop the files from the VMware OVF tool. Once those files are copied, we can just go ahead and jump straight into the Proxmox server via SSH. And if we look at the root directory, we do have that OVF tool folder. And within that, we have a whole bunch of files. Mostly what we're going to care about in this directory is the OVF tool and ovftool.bin, which we'll have to make executable to make sure that the script can run. So to do that, we'll use chmod +x ovf tool star, and that'll catch both of those files. So then we can go ahead and begin the download and conversion process from ESX. And we'll do this by running the OVF tool, giving it the IP address of the ESX host, followed by the VM name, which we just saw a minute ago, and that's going to be the Ansible VM. And then I'll go ahead and tell it to drop these files in the parent directory, so a // here, after which OVF tool will go ahead and connect out to that ESX host to begin the export process. Now, if we wanted to while this is running, we could go ahead and go over to the ESX host and see that there has been a VM export task started. This export will run a while depending on how big of a VM you have, how fast your disk is, and the network speed between the hosts. Once our VM is finished exporting, we can hop up a directory back to the parent directory and check the contents. And now we do have a folder named Ansible. So we'll go ahead and move into that directory and take a look at the contents here. Now we have a couple of files for the virtual machine. The one that we're going to care about is the ansible.ovf. So this is the file that we'll need to import. Now, one thing that we'll need to be sure of when we start the import is that we are using a unique VM ID. And so one way we can find out about this is by either going to the Proxmox Web UI, or from the CLI here, we can just do a QM list. Now, of course, since this is a new install of Proxmox, right now it doesn't show that we have anything running, so we get no response. That being said, we can just go ahead and import starting with the first available UID, which in Proxmox by default is 100. So we'll begin the import with QM, import OVF, ID number 100. We'll point it to our ansible.ovf file. And then last but not least, we'll have to select which data store we'd like to put this on. Now in this case, this VM does not have my network storage attached yet. All it has is the local-lvm file system that was configured by default when I installed Proxmox, so we'll go ahead and place the VM there for now. Since this is a small VM and this is running on NVMe storage, the import runs pretty quickly, after which if we want, we can do a QM list again like we did earlier, and this time we do see that we have one VM with ID 100, The name is Ansible, and currently that VM is stopped. Next, in order to make sure that everything works, we can go ahead and hop over to the Proxmox Web UI, where now you see that we do have one VM set up, and that is our Ansible server with ID number 100. Now at quick glance, it does look like the configured CPU and memory matches with 2 CPUs and 4 GB of RAM. But if we take a look at the hardware, one thing that is not converted when we import the new VM is the network interfaces. So in order for the VM to function, we will have to replace any network interfaces that we had. Now, of course, you'll want to match some of this config to whatever the VM had in ESX. In this case, my Ansible VM only had one network card. So we'll go up to Add, Network Device. Then we can select which bridge to add it to. Right now, I only have the default VM bridge 0 configured. We can add a VLAN tag if we like. Of course, this will require additional setup in the networking section, which I won't be covering in this video. In my case, I will be tagging this for VLAN 2 because that is the appropriate VLAN that this virtual machine needs to be running on. Next, the network card model does default to the Intel E1000, but we can change this if we like. For most of the VMs that I've been converting, as long as it makes sense, I've been converting them to the VirtIO adapter. And so far, this has worked out pretty well for all of them. So I'll go ahead and select that here. Once we're good with that, we'll just go ahead and click Add. And now we can see that our hardware tab does show that we have all of the same hardware plus our new network card. So now we can go ahead and start the new VM and pop open the console real quick. Once this boots up, it's worth double checking the network configuration. I have had a handful of VMs that have imported OK and have moved the network configuration over to the new network card. However, most of them have not, as the network interface name has changed within the Linux system. So in this case, if I do an IP adder, we see that we have the loopback interface as well as our Ethernet interface at ENS18. Now I know for a fact that prior to the migration, that interface was ENS192, and so all of the configuration that I had for networking is applied to 192 instead of 18. Luckily, that is a quick fix in Debian. So we'll just open up the interfaces file real quick. And in here, it's just as easy as swapping all of the ENS192 values for 18. We'll save that file, restart with system control restart networking, and we'll run IP adder one more time to double check. Sure enough, it does look like all of our IP addressing now has moved over to that new ENS18 interface. And just for fun, let's go ahead and see if we can ping one of Google's DNS servers at 8.8.8.8, which does succeed. So at least in my case, because all of the things that I'm running in my home lab have been mostly Linux servers and some networking appliances, the migration process has been pretty smooth for me so far, and I haven't had any major problems. But I'm looking forward to getting to play around with Proxmox a bit more in the future and potentially making some more content depending on what seems to be interesting. Okay, and so that's all I wanted to share today. I hope that this video was helpful, and thank you so much for watching.